Good evening, guys. Here's your bonus one for the night. The title is Hidden Heroes, spotlighting the struggles of America's caregivers. Here we go with the presentation I made for you. Please sit back and enjoy. Okay, names of truth. The surrounding page makes impossible to ignore. Caregivers are sustaining the emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being of millions of Americans, yet they do so in the shadows, rarely recognized, rarely supported, and often pushed to the brink. The article uses personal storytelling, theoretically theological framing, and policy analysis to reveal that this invisibility is not accidental. It is the predictable outcome of society that relies on caregivers while failing to uphold them. Caregivers as hidden heroes. The page opens with a vivid, intimate narrative. A woman caring for her mother through stage 5 lymphoma while raising young children and completing an MBA. Her story is not framed as extraordinary. It is presented as painfully common. It illustrates how caregivers carry profound emotional weight, balancing fear, anticipatory grief, and the daily uncertainty of illness. Perform complex skilled labor, medication management, mobility assistance, symptom tracking, emotional regulation, tasks that minor professional healthcare roles, but without training, compensation, or respite, restructure their entire lives around caregiving, often sacrificing sleep, career advancement, friendships, and their own health. The article positions caregivers as a shadow workforce, millions of people whose unpaid labor keeps families intact and their health care system functioning, even as their contributions remain largely unacknowledged. The struggles the headline brings into focus. The page names caregiving as a multi-dimensional crisis, one that touches every part of a caregiver's life. Burnout, described as widespread and chronic, driven by exhaustion, isolation, and the absence of mindful support. Role, role overload. Caregivers often juggle employment, parenting, household management, and medical care simultaneously. Financial strain. Many reduce work hours, leave jobs, or deplete savings to provide care, deepening long-term economic vulnerability. Gender inequity. Women disproportionately shoulder caregiving responsibilities, compounding wage gaps and career interruptions. Racial and social economic disparities. Caregivers of color and low income families often provide more intensive care with fewer resources and less institutional support. Isolation and emotional depletion. Caregivers frequently navigate grief, guilt, and loneliness without community acknowledgement or relief. This article, uh, the article underscores that these burdens do not remain uh, confined to individuals' households. They ripple outward, affecting workplaces, uh, congregations, local economies, and the stability of long term care systems. A moral and spiritual lens on caregiving. Because this is a center for public justice, peace, the headline also signals a theoretical argument woven throughout the page. Humans are created for independence, inter, interdependence on radical individualism. Caregiving is a sacred vocation rooted in conventional relationships and mutual responsibility. Churches are called to bear one another's burdens, offering practical and emotional support to caregivers. Honoring elders is a biblical mandate, and neglecting caregivers undermines that mandate. The article frames caregiving as holy work, and the neglect of caregivers as a moral and communal failure that contradicts Christian commitments to dignity, justice, and shared responsibility. Why the crisis remains invisible. The page shows how invisibility is produced and reinforced through cultural, structural, and policy failures. Cultural ageism that sidelines older adults and devalues the labor required to support them. The healthcare system that depends on unpaid family labor while offering minimal structural support. Fragmented government policies that leave caregivers without consistent access to paid leave, respite care, or financial assistance. Social norms that treat caregiving as a private family duty rather than a shared societal responsibility. This invisibility is not beginning, it leads to burnout, inequity, and preventable suffering for caregivers and care recipients alike. What the article calls for. The headline's urgency is matched by a clear call to action across sectors. Government should expand paid family leave, strengthen long-term care infrastructure, and creates policies that unpaid families as essential social institutions. Churches and civil society should act as first responders, offering meals, transportation, childcare, respite, and advocacy for caregivers. Communities must recognize caregiving as essential labor and build networks that sustain caregiving emotionally, practically, and spiritually. The article argues that without collective responsibility, caregivers cannot flourish, and the entire care ecosystem becomes unsustainable. This framing aligns closely with your work. It blends policy, equity, and emotional truth and moral immigration into a narrative that honors caregivers while exposing the systems that fail them. What direction are you leaning toward next? Turning this into a slide deck, a public facing explainer, or myth busting segments for caregivers and families. Okay, guys, here's the second part of E tonight. Honoring America's family caregivers. The unseen workforce behind our health system captures the central message of the page. Family caregivers are performing essential, skilled, and often exhausting labor that keeps the U.S. healthcare system or health system functioning. Yet their contributions remain largely invisible, unsupported, and uh, uncompensated. The surrounding content paints a detailed picture of who these caregivers are, what they do, and why their work is both indispensable and unvalued. The page emphasizes that 63 million Americans, 1 in 4 adults, are providing care to a family member with a disability or complex medical condition. Their work includes give me 1 second, guys. To go through my papers here. Activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, feeding, and mobility support. Instrumental activities of daily living, like managing finances, transportation, housekeeping, and coordinating appointments. Medical level tasks, including medication management, monitoring symptoms, and navigating treatment plans. These responsibilities, minor to the work of trained health professionals, yet caregivers rarely receive training, compensation, or formal recognition. They are described as the linchpin in the healthcare of older adults. Indispensable, but treated as peripheral. The article highlights several structural reasons this workforce remains unseen. Most caregivers receive no pay, despite providing labor equivalent to a full-time job. Even among states that offer Medicaid self-directed programs, fewer than 25% of caregivers receive compensation, with some states as low as 10%. AARP's valuation of unpaid caregiving, 600 billion annually, is likely an underestimate given the growth in caregiver numbers. Caregivers often must maintain outside employment because caregiving alone cannot sustain them financially. This invisibility is not just cultural, it is built into policy, reimbursement structures, and the design of long-term care systems. The page makes clear that the burden is not only economic. Nearly 1 in 4 caregivers provides 40 hours of care per week on top of other responsibilities. Many report low mental and physical health driven by chronic stress, lack of rest, and limited supports. The sandwich generation, caregivers around the age of 51, mostly women, must care for an aging parent while raising children. Creating intense emotional and logistical strain. Even children, 4 million of them, serve as supporting caregivers, reshaping family roles and responsibilities. Caregiving is described as meaningful and even beautiful, but also a role that can erode health, stability, and identity without adequate support. The page argues that honoring caregivers requires more than symbolic appreciation. It requires policy change, including expanding Medicare to cover long-term services and supports LTSS, protecting Medicare funding, which currently provides the only path to caregiver compensation in many states. Eliminating restrictive home health eligibility rules that block needed care, providing training and information so caregivers can safely and confidently perform the complex tasks expected of them. The message is clear. Caregivers are care professionals, and the health system depends on them. Honoring them means building policies that recognize and support them or their labor. Taken together, the surrounding content shows that the headline is naming a truth that is both practical and moral. Caregivers are the backbone of long-term care in America. Their labor is essential to the functioning of Medicare, Medicaid, and the broader health system, yet they remain unseen economically, politically, and socially. Honoring them requires visibility, compensation, training, and structural reform. The headline is not just a celebratory, it's a call to action. As you continue shaping messaging around caregiver visibility and systematic reform, would it help you to turn this into a concise slide ready summary or myth busting section for your next presentation? Okay, guys, so that is your last one for tonight. I will see everybody tomorrow for shows. Until then, Gator Wellness. Take care, folks. Have a good evening.